Munich, 1923. The city was a powder keg. The echoes of the First World War still haunted the streets. Soldiers returned home to shattered lives, industries collapsed, and the German mark had become almost worthless. Hyperinflation had wiped out savings, families were starving, and a sense of national humiliation hung over the country like a storm cloud. Germany was a nation on the edge, teetering between democracy and chaos, and into this world stepped a man who would change history forever. Adolf Hitler. Hitler was not yet the dictator the world would later fear, but he was a rising figure in the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or NSDAP. Charismatic, ruthless, and obsessed with power, he had already begun to exploit the widespread discontent. Hitler saw Germany's desperation as an opportunity, and he dreamed of a revolution, one that would overthrow the Weimar Republic and restore the nation's pride through nationalist fervor and authoritarian rule. But his first attempt to seize power would come violently and almost immediately crash into failure. To understand why the Beer Hall Putsch happened, we must look at Germany itself. The Weimar Republic, established in 1919, was fragile from the start. Multiple political parties vied for power, coalitions were unstable, and extremist groups on both the left and right roamed the streets. Communists, socialists, and paramilitary militias, many composed of disillusioned veterans, clashed with nationalist and conservative factions. Among the most influential of these were the Freikorps, ex-soldiers who fought to maintain order but also sought revenge against perceived enemies of Germany. Bavaria, in particular, had become a hotbed of right-wing nationalist sentiment, making it the perfect ground for a revolutionary attempt. The economic devastation was staggering. Hyperinflation meant that by 1923, a loaf of bread could cost billions of marks. Citizens watched helplessly as their life savings vanished, and anger toward the Treaty of Versailles, blamed for Germany's suffering, was palpable. A fertile ground existed for a movement promising strength, revenge, and renewal. Hitler and his followers recognized this, and they knew that the time to act was now. Hitler's path to this moment had been shaped by years of frustration and ambition. A former soldier in the Great War, he had survived the trenches of France and Belgium, carrying with him a profound sense of nationalism and a belief in the superiority of the German people. He had tried and failed to become an artist in Vienna, experiencing poverty and rejection. Politics offered him a stage for his obsession with influence and authority. By 1923, the NSDAP was a small but growing party, increasingly paramilitary in nature. Hitler surrounded himself with devoted allies: General Erich Ludendorff, a respected war hero, Ernst Röhm, a fierce paramilitary organizer, and a cadre of stormtroopers ready to fight for their leader's vision. Inspired by Mussolini's march on Rome in 1922, Hitler believed that a bold, violent seizure of power could ignite a revolution in Germany. On the evening of November 8, 1923, Hitler and his followers took the first step. They converged on the Bürgerbräukeller, a large and famous beer hall in Munich, where the Bavarian Minister-President Gustav von Kahr, the state commissioner, and other officials were addressing a political meeting. Hitler stormed the hall with his stormtroopers, firing a pistol into the ceiling to announce the revolution. The atmosphere turned instantly tense. Hundreds of people froze, unsure whether this was a staged spectacle or the beginning of a genuine uprising. Hitler's voice cut through the room, declaring that the Bavarian government had been overthrown and that the revolution had begun. Kahr and the officials, initially shocked, were forced into making statements in support of the coup. But even within the room, the tension was palpable. Fear mingled with disbelief. Threats were exchanged, negotiations attempted, and the room was heavy with uncertainty. Outside, Munich's streets were preparing for a confrontation that would decide the fate of the city. The following day, November 9th, Hitler attempted to capitalize on the momentum. He led his followers, armed and uniformed, through the streets of Munich, intending to rally support and seize control of the government. Banners waved, boots marched, and the stormtroopers' disciplined steps were meant to intimidate and inspire. Yet the city did not rise to his call. Some citizens watched with curiosity, others with fear, and many ignored the procession entirely. The march reached the Feldherrnhalle, a historic monument in the city centre. Here, the confrontation with police came to a head. The two sides faced each other, tension crackling in the cool morning air. Shots rang out. In the chaos, 16 of Hitler's followers fell alongside 4 police officers and 1 civilian caught in the crossfire. Panic spread. The putsch had failed. Hitler, narrowly avoiding death, fled the scene, leaving the streets behind in disarray. Hitler was captured shortly thereafter and charged with high treason. His trial, however, became more than a legal proceeding. It was a stage. Hitler, ever the showman, used the courtroom to spread his ideology, to present himself as a devoted nationalist and a visionary who had acted for the good of Germany. His speeches captivated the public, and he gained national attention far beyond what the failed coup could have achieved militarily. Sentenced to 5 years in Landsberg prison, Hitler served only 9 months. Yet these months were crucial. He dictated the first volume of Mein Kampf, outlining his vision for Germany's future, his ideology, and the blueprint for his political strategy. The failure of the putsch had taught him lessons in timing, public perception, and the value of legality as a path to power. He realized that violent revolution was not the only means. He could manipulate the system, use propaganda, and rise through political channels. The Beer Hall Putsch may have been a failure in immediate terms, but its impact was far-reaching. It exposed Hitler to the national stage, galvanized loyal followers, and provided the NSDAP with a narrative of martyrdom and struggle. The fallen stormtroopers became symbols of sacrifice, and the ideology Hitler promoted gained traction among those frustrated with Germany's political instability. The lessons of the putsch extend beyond its historical moment. It was a stark warning of how fragile democratic institutions can be when confronted with extremist ambition and social unrest. It shows how charismatic leaders can exploit fear, poverty, and national humiliation to mobilize support for radical change. The failed coup also underscores a chilling truth. History is often shaped not just by the victories of men, but by their failures and the way they respond to them. In the aftermath, Germany continued to wrestle with political instability. Hyperinflation, unemployment, and social unrest persisted, setting the stage for future crises. Hitler's strategy shifted, but his ambitions did not. By the early 1930s, the NSDAP was no longer a fringe movement. The failed putsch had planted the seeds for an eventual legal ascent to power, culminating in Hitler's appointment as Chancellor in 1933. Looking back, the Beer Hall Putsch is a cautionary tale. It was a violent, audacious attempt to seize power, a moment when Germany's democracy could have collapsed entirely. Its failure, however, did not prevent the rise of tyranny. It merely delayed it. The events of November 1923 remind us of the fragility of political systems, the dangers of extremism, and the importance of vigilance. This moment, hidden from many history books, shows that the rise of one of the 20th century's most infamous figures was neither sudden nor inevitable. It was shaped by opportunity, ambition, and the fragile conditions of a society in crisis. The Beer Hall Putsch stands as a testament to the consequences of unrest, the power of ideology, and the way history can pivot on moments that may seem small, yet echo across decades. History is full of these hidden turning points, moments that reveal how fragile our systems truly are and how ambition can reshape the world. The Beer Hall Putsch is one such moment, a violent, failed attempt that nonetheless illuminated the path of a man who would come to define an era.